Welcome to today's Explainer. We're doing something absolutely fascinating today. We're going to take the abstract, kind of confusing concepts of the human mind, and we're breaking them down into a concrete, actionable blueprint. Using the brilliant framework from psychiatrist Dr. Paul Conti, we're going to demystify exactly how your mind works, and more importantly, how you can actively build up your mental fitness.
Okay, so let's just dive right in by asking a really simple question. Why in the world do we track our physical metrics so obsessively, but leave our psychological well-being entirely up to guesswork? I mean, think about it. We know our exact resting heart rate, we know our daily step counts, we know exactly what vitamins we take in the morning. But when it comes to our mental health, most of us are just kind of wandering around in the dark. Dr. Conti points out that this makes absolutely no sense. We need a structural framework for the mind.
So here's our structural roadmap to demystify all of this today. We'll start with the mental fitness parallel, move into agency and gratitude, break down the structure of the self, look at the function of the self, unmask our defense mechanisms, and finally wrap up with your generative drive.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the mental fitness parallel, treating the mind exactly like the body.
To really wrap our heads around mental fitness, we need to anchor it to something we already know. And there's this wildly fascinating contrast between how we maintain our physical bodies versus our minds. On the physical side, it's super concrete, right? If you want more endurance, you go for a run. If you want strength, you pick up heavy things. But look at the mental health goals: agency, gratitude, empowerment, humility. They sound amazing, but how on earth do you train them? You can't just snap your fingers and say, okay, I'm going to be 20% more empowered today. You have to understand the underlying mechanics of the mind first, exactly like how you'd understand the mechanics of your muscles.
Moving right along to Section 2, Agency and Gratitude as the Ultimate Destination.
Before we start tinkering with the mechanics, we absolutely need an end goal. Like, what is the mental equivalent of peak physical fitness? Well, think of building a healthy mind kind of like building a house. The rock-solid foundation of that house consists of empowerment and humility. Empowerment simply means you actually have the functional ability to navigate the real world. And humility? That means you understand your exact place within it, recognizing that the world is incredibly complex and, frankly, much bigger than just you. When you have that stable foundation, it lets us build upward and approach life through a lens of active agency and gratitude.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that agency and gratitude aren't just passive states. They aren't just fleeting emotions that wash over you. They are highly active tools sitting right on top of a very complex psychology. Agency is that powerful feeling that you can actually make choices and alter your reality. Gratitude is the deep appreciation for simply being here to make those choices. And Dr. Conti argues that if you operate with these two traits working in tandem, it is virtually impossible not to live a highly productive, empowered, and genuinely happy life.
Let's move to Section 3, Structure of the Self, or the Nouns of the Mind.
Okay, now we're popping the hood. Imagine your mind is this massive iceberg, and what immediately stands out here is the sheer scale of it all. Our biological supercomputer is humming away in that massive 95% beneath the surface. That is your unconscious mind. It's processing literally millions of inputs, memories, and biological signals every single second. And all of that massive data feeds up to the tiny 5% conscious mind, the little part sticking out above the water. That tiny tip is the I. It's the self you actually hear talking in your head. But because it's so incredibly small and exposed, it is highly, highly vulnerable.
Because our conscious mind is so vulnerable to fear and confusion, we end up building something called a character structure. Think of this as a sort of protective nest built right around our conscious mind to shield it from the elements. This structure dictates exactly how you interface with the outside world. It determines your default settings, like are you naturally trusting when you walk into a crowded room, or are you highly suspicious? Do you avoid conflict, or do you tackle it head-on? This character structure is directly molded by whatever is happening under the water in your unconscious.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, Function of the Self, or the Verbs of the Mind.
Now that we know what the structure is, let's map out what the mind actually does. This whole process unfolds through 5 super clear, sequential steps. First up, self-awareness. Just the basic recognition that there is a me. Step 2 is defenses in action. These are those automatic, totally unconscious reflexes firing off to keep you safe. Step 3 is salience. Out of the thousands of inputs hitting you, what does your brain actually choose to focus on? Step 4 is behavior. What you physically do as a result of all that. And finally, step 5 is strivings.
your big goals for the future. This flow brilliantly shows us how our hidden, unconscious reflexes dictate our real-time everyday behavior and ultimately chart the entire course of our lives.
Let's tackle Section 5, Unmasking Defense Mechanisms, the bugs in the software.
If we really want to reach that goal of agency and gratitude, we absolutely have to confront our psychological roadblocks. And here's the core truth of it all. Unconscious defense mechanisms exist for a reason. They exist to protect that incredibly vulnerable conscious mind from fear, confusion, and despair. But while these defenses are inherently meant to keep us safe from emotional pain, they so frequently become maladaptive. They totally warp our view of reality and cause us to make terrible decisions without us even realizing it, all because the brain thinks it's keeping us safe from a perceived threat.
Let's break down exactly how these hidden glitches hijack our daily lives. Take projection, for example. You're secretly furious about work, but you don't want to own that feeling, so you project it outward, literally convincing yourself that the traffic on the commute is actively out to get you. Then there's displacement. This is shifting your frustration to a safer target. You have a terrible day at the office, and instead of processing it, you go home and metaphorically kick the dog. And finally, projective identification. This one's wild. It's when you unconsciously spread your own emotional state to force others to meet your needs. You lose your keys, you feel panicked, and suddenly you act in a way that makes everyone else in the room anxious, so they drop everything just to help you. They're fascinating glitches for sure, but man, are they destructive.
And hey, we really have to talk about humor as a defense too. Now, while a genuinely good joke can diffuse tension, using sarcasm and cynicism constantly is a deeply unhealthy defense mechanism. They actually act as aggressive weapons used to isolate ourselves and belittle the happiness of others. Why do we do it? Because if you're already disappointed in the world, you can't be further disappointed, right? It's a toxic reflex used to protect a fragile ego, but it absolutely destroys your ability to build genuine, meaningful connections with people.
Now listen to this truth, because it hits hard. Trauma doesn't care about the clock or the calendar. When you find yourself repeating the exact same toxic relationship choices or making the exact same career blunders over and over, you've probably asked yourself, why do I keep doing this? I know better. Well, it's because your brain is engaging in something called a repetition compulsion. It's a profound, completely unconscious attempt to go back into a familiar negative situation and finally fix an old wound. The unconscious mind literally has no concept of time. It's just desperately trying to heal, even if it's tearing you apart in the present.
All right, final stretch. Section 6, your generative drive, the engine of mental fitness.
Finally, we transition away from the problems and look at the ultimate solution. You see, humans are fueled by intrinsic drives. We have the aggressive drive, which, by the way, isn't just about violence. It's actually the raw fuel for action and pushing forward. Then we have the pleasure drive, which pushes us to seek relief and gratification so we aren't just, white-knuckling our way through life. But while those two provide our basic survival fuel, it's the third one, the generative drive, that truly sets us apart as a species and allows us to actually flourish.
You can really think of this as your ultimate psychological muscle. The generative drive is that inherent desire deep within you to make things better, to explore, to learn, and to help others simply for the sake of helping them. Real happiness isn't just passively sitting on a beach sipping a drink. True happiness is deeply, profoundly active. The more you flex your curiosity and your desire for altruism, the stronger your mental fitness becomes. It is the core engine that actually drives you toward empowerment, humility, and ultimately that holy grail of agency and gratitude. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. How are you going to tap into your generative drive today to actively build your mental fitness? Now that you actually have the blueprint to your own mind, now that you know about that massive iceberg beneath the surface and the hidden defenses actively trying to hijack your steering wheel, what steps will you take today to pursue a life of true agency and gratitude? Don't leave your mental fitness up to guesswork for another second. Get in there and build it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.